gonna show you how to make pie crust. So this is gonna take a couple of practice runs with you guys, I'm sure, but it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of people are fearful of, and there's really not much to fear. Cold butter, cold water. Everything's cold. You want everything as cold as possible. So I've got a food processor, but you don't need to use a food processor. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. I find this to be the easiest because I have really, really warm hands. If you have nice cold hands or you're in a cooler kitchen, you can do it by hand. The other thing you can do that I always tell people is you can grate your butter. So the goal is to make sure that your butter is so cold that each little piece of butter is covered in a little bit of flour. So that when it goes into the oven and bakes, the butter melts and just pushes up enough and gives enough flavor throughout the flour then, and kind of gives it that flavor and texture that you're looking for. Okay. All right, so I've got my flour, and I'm using about 2.5 cups of flour, okay? I will have this recipe online. Please refer to the recipe because by weight is always better. So I'm gonna add that in there. And then I'm gonna add my butter. So I've got these chunks of butter ready to go. It's little cubes, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add that all in there, and I'm gonna do this in a couple of turns. I'm not gonna try to do it all at once. My butter has been in the freezer, so I cut it and then I put it back in the freezer to get nice and cold again. Now I'm gonna put that on, and I'm gonna pulse 6 times, that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? And then I'm just gonna shake it around, and look, if I see large pieces of butter, I'm gonna do 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, I'm just gonna look in there and I'm just gonna shake it around every once in a while just to see if I see any more big pieces of butter. So I'm gonna take a spoon, not using anything, I'm gonna just take a spoon and just kind of look in there just to make sure that the butter is evenly distributed. And it is. And I'm still not touching it because, like I said, my hands are warm and I'm gonna melt that butter up right away. And I don't wanna do that until I start adding my water. So that looks good. This is for a double crust, okay? So if you want, you can do half this amount. It is about a little over a cup of butter for a double pie crust. All right, so I got myself a bowl and I'm going to dump my flour and butter mixture in. A lot of people will then start asking me questions like, what about the shortening, or why are you using all butter? I like using all butter because I like the flavor of butter. If you want to use shortening, you can. I would take out about 6 tablespoons and replace it with shortening. The shortening needs to be cold too, and the difference in flavor is the mouthfeel. You'll get more flakes when you use shortening, and with the butter, it's more of a denser crust, and so it's almost crispier as opposed to flakier. So really just what kind of crust you're looking for is what you're gonna do. All right, so now my crumbles of butter are throughout my flour, excuse me, and I've got my ice cold water. So the best way to get ice cold water is to actually let the ice melt into the water. Not into the water, but into water. So in other words, this should be full of ice too, and it should have been from the actual ice cubes. So I'm gonna add about 4 tablespoons of water to begin with, okay? And that's it. And then if you've got a fork or a spoon, all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna toss that cold water with that butter. And that's it. I just need enough water in there to bind it all together. And as you add the water, you'll notice that it'll start coming together. So that's it. Now I'm gonna smush it up to the sides of the bowl to see if it's sticking together. It's not. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 more tablespoons. Okay? And you might need more water. Depending on your kitchen, this varies. But what I don't want you to do is start sticking your hands in there just quite yet. You will, don't worry, but just not quite yet. So now again, I'm gonna push to the sides of the bowl to see if it's sticking together, and you know what? It's starting to get there. I'm gonna give 1 more tablespoon of water, And if you feel like your bowl's getting warm or your kitchen's getting warm, take this whole thing and stick it right back in your fridge or freezer for a couple minutes and then come back to it. The colder this stays, the more flakes and layers you're gonna get out of your dough. So now everything is together. I'm going to start kneading it against the bowl to bind. And again, once you start doing this, you might notice that you need a little bit more water. I just don't want you adding all the water in at once, because that will defeat the purpose of this. I'm gonna keep going. And a lot of people will make this in the food processor, perfectly fine. No reason why you can't do it in there too. I just wanted to show you how you can do this in a bowl without a food processor. So again, just kneading this so that it comes together. And that little bit of warmth in my hand right now is what's binding it together. I really am not gonna add more liquid in here. I'm just kneading this, and not a hard knead, just a knead to gather it. Just kind of push and pull together so that it comes into a dough. And this is a large amount, so it might take some time for you to actually get it all. There we go. So now, and you might see pieces of butter throughout, perfectly fine. No problems at all. All right, so there's our dough. So you've got a couple of options at this point. You can take this dough and refrigerate it, which you're going to do no matter what. Or you can split it into 2 pieces and then refrigerate it. So it depends. You might need a cover if you're making a double crust. What I say with double crust is keep the pie crust whole as a double crust and then make that top layer with the extra when you're cutting it out. So I'm gonna take this dough now. I am going to put it in you can use parchment paper, or I like using a bag. And we're gonna do like a quick chill. I'm gonna do about a 10-15 minute chill just so that we can roll this out. So I'm gonna be right back. So I've had one crust here ready to go, and it's been just in the refrigerator for a few minutes. So it's still soft. And I'm gonna push my food processor away. And I want you to go excessive with the flour, okay? So we're gonna grab flour. And we're gonna give this dough some layers. We're gonna do 1 layer. So I'm gonna roll, turn, roll, turn, roll, turn, roll, turn. Doing a little bit of a turn every once in a while. This initial part, excess flour is okay, because I don't want things to stick. Oops. I want layers in my dough. And so go ahead and use flour. I have some of my zucchini from my quiche in there. There we go. Keep going around. And use your hands to heal any parts that might be coming up. All right, that's about what we want. I'm gonna grab my pie dish. So, what do you use? Pyrex glass is probably gonna give you the best results, everyone. I know we want deep dish, we want all these pretty ceramic ones. For some reason, the Pyrex seems to be able to give you more of an even color and texture. So if you don't wanna use it, perfectly fine. You can use whatever kind of pie pan you have lying around, but what you wanna do is use it as a gauge, and you wanna be about 1 inch to ½ an inch over the side so that you can create your edge, all right? So there's a couple of ways you can do this to pick it up, because obviously it might be sticking to the bottom. You can fold it, or you can roll it. So I'm just gonna show you the different ways. You can roll it around a rolling pin and then pick it up and layer it in there. What I like to do though, is I usually like to just fold it into a quarter, put my pie plate right in the middle, find the middle, just like that, and then open it up. Ta-da, okay? So now you've got all this extra edge hanging over. This is where it gets fun. I'm gonna tuck everything underneath and create a lip up on top. So I'm just gonna go around. At any point you feel like your pie crust is starting to weep, in the sense that there's a little bit of butter coming out, or things are squishy, or things don't seem to be going right, especially if the dough is getting warm, put it in your refrigerator or freezer immediately, okay? All this hard work can easily be destroyed by that warmth. Because like I said, each little piece of flour right now has a little bit of butter around it to give it the magic that it needs. All right, so there might be an edge that's not as pretty. Perfectly fine. I'm gonna show you how to make it pretty. So some edges might be a little bit thicker, at which point you can kind of pinch it off, and then you can squish it along the sides if you want. All right, just like that. Okay, so, not really pretty. How do I make this pretty? You can use a fork, so you can go around the edge and do a fork if you want. Or finger, your knuckle, and your thumb and your index finger on the other end. You're just gonna pinch, you're gonna push around your knuckle, okay? Just like this. So I'm just going around. And that way you can take this and fill it with whatever you want. But the most important part of this right now will be taking it and freezing it first, okay? So we're gonna freeze it before we bake it. So that's it. We're gonna take this, and now you can make and fill it with whatever you want. And you can blind bake it, you can bake it just like that. I'll give you the different tips and tricks though, but for today, that's what we're gonna make, just our pie crust.